All right. And we are live. Woo! Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Start Thinking Forward podcast. This show dives deep into the minds of entrepreneurs, adventurers, and trailblazers who defy the odds. Today, we have a guest whose story is nothing short of a roller coaster ride, a tale of transformation, tendency, and triumph. Meet Adrian Knight, an acquisition entrepreneur who has turned his life around from a nervous breakdown at 19 to building a multi-million-dollar children's education empire. But that's not all. He's also an endurance athlete who has conquered terrains from the Arctic Circle to the Spartan World Champions. Welcome, Adrian. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Brandon. I'm doing good, thank you. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here. Thank you for having me from the other side of the pond. So
thank you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm definitely interested. I actually wanted to compete for the Spartan. I actually want to get a team. I actually have a team on the platform. I just haven't found teammates that want to do the challenge with me.
I'll do it with you.
I actually started with a team and everything. I'm like, I'm going to do it. The first thing you have to do is do your first race. I guess maybe if I do my first race, maybe I can attract some people. But for whatever reason, no one wants to, do the race with me. So I'm nowhere near a trifecta yet. So
it's one of those things where one of the things I love about those events are the communities with it, because you find similar crazy people who want to punish themselves through it. But it looks like punishment, but it's not. But just some background on myself. So I am a acquisition entrepreneur, and for anyone who's not familiar with that term, that's a entrepreneur who essentially buys businesses. I'm a absolutely terrible startup entrepreneur. I've had 12 failed startups. I had one that kind of succeeded, which was my last business before I got into buying and selling companies, which is what I do now. And that has been a transformational process for me, really. But on top of that, as you alluded to, yes, I love doing endurance events, and particularly ones that are a bit out there. So in March, in June, I done an ultra marathon across Northern England, from sort of east to west. In March, I was in the Arctic Circle doing a multi-day endurance event, which also included climbing one of the mountains up there, which was phenomenal. We camped out. It was minus 17 degrees. It was just the most amazing experience. Last year, I was running, cycling, and kayaking across Scotland, and I've got a few more events lined up, including the Spartan World Championship in November. I'm doing a Spartan trifecta in a few weeks' time, actually, to sort of prepare for that. And in March of next year, I'm doing a 14-day jungle trek across Panama from the East Coast to the West Coast. So it's definitely keeping me busy.
Yeah, and it also shows like how much you're pushing yourself to the next level. You just can't get enough. And I think that's the key ingredient to entrepreneurship, being a leader. Anything that you're doing that the average person's not going to do, not willing. No, you know what? I take that back, because I just had a segment talking about that. It's not that a lot of people can't do it. A lot of people not willing to do it. It's like, you can do it. You can start exercising. You can start putting yourself in a regimen to participate in some of the things that Adrian's talking about today. But the question always, the punchline of this is, will you? And Adrian wakes up, shows up, and shows out. And that's why he's accomplishing things that you've accomplished, brother. So I definitely want to applaud you on that, because that's definitely something that most people will never experience or understand what it is to be a champion in that regard. And to me, that's a champion spirit, is you constantly picking goals and going after them no matter what. So I definitely applaud you for that, especially when you can do it physically. A lot of people, if you can do it physically, it's like, well, I know I can do it mentally. All right. So Can you discuss a little bit about your life before and after your nervous breakdown and the pivotal moments for personal development? Like, what took you from 19 years old kid, going through all these issues to superstar, trifecta Spartan world champion,
It's been an interesting journey, and one that is and has been full of peaks and troughs. So in my teenage years, I was obese or significantly overweight, and I made a decision when I was 15 that that wasn't me. I wasn't going to be that person, and within a period of 10 months, I lost, I mean, it must have been the best part of 70, 80 pounds. Like, it was a significant amount of weight that I lost in a very short period. And life had been quite bad, I guess, I would say. Like, I had a lovely upbringing, amazing family, but I was just so disconnected and lost, as a lot of teenage people are. And but life was starting to get good because I lost all this weight and I had a new social circle of friends, and girls started to take notice and all of these good things. And I was out of school, which I couldn't wait for. I felt very constrained and stuck in a school environment, and life was going quite well. And then I went to we call it college. It's not college as it's defined in the US, but essentially it was higher education before going to college. And I had a good experience there. I didn't really turn up much, but I had some good friends and had a lot of fun. But I was itching to get out and to go exploring. And so my final exam was on a 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. I'll never forget this. It was 4 p.m. on a Tuesday, and by 9 a.m. the next morning, I was in Paris. And that was the start of a adventure, really, where I traveled across 12 European countries. I'd set out an itinerary for those, for my time away, which was sort of months. But I ended up doing my itinerary within 4 weeks. I was just so excited. And that was when the trip really started, at the end of the 4 weeks, because I remember standing in the train station in Rome and thinking, where do I want to go? Do I want to go to Switzerland or Austria? And just like having a great time. And there were some amazing experiences, which, will be with me for a lifetime. But I was coming back because I was due to start a job working in construction. And I came back and life just could not have been better. I was 18. I just, had the most amazing experience that some people, don't always get to do. They're not fortunate enough to do. So I came back and I started this job in construction. And slowly I noticed my mental health started to deteriorate. I'd gone from this amazing high where I'd sort of, over the previous 2 or 3 years, lost all of this weight, started to expand and grow personally to the pinnacle of traveling across Europe and having the most amazing experiences, to coming back and getting into sort of the real world per se. And I just started to decline to the point where I wasn't turning up for work. I had my direct superiors, like my bosses, requesting for me to go in, and I just outright refused. I'd like to go in to speak to them. So that put me in trouble with them. And there was if I'm honest as well, I was smoking a lot of like marijuana, like trying to distract from the situation and just sort of remove and disassociate myself. And then it kind of came to a crunch the following summer when someone like our site foreman, he never really took a liking to me, and we was finishing a big job, and the drainage system was open, and he wanted me to go in there to clear out the human remains that had been in there for a while. And I just said no. I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm just, I'm not doing that. Not that because I felt better than anyone or anything like that. I'm just not going to do that. And he was standing there saying, no, you are going to do this. And it was a standoff essentially. And then I refused it in the end, and my sort of mentor who I was shadowing, he sort of jumped in to de-escalate the situation and said, I'll do it. And then we was on the van going back home, and I was like, I'm never coming back here again. And the next day I woke up, and that's when I went to the doctors and explained what was happening, and they said, you're having a nervous breakdown here. And it was a real low for me because, well, as it would be for anyone, but they subscribed medicine and a lot of it. And I remember going home, and all of a sudden, you know, I was sitting on my bed in my parents' house, and didn't have this job to go to. My mum and dad were asking why, what's going on. I wasn't really saying anything, and I had all of these different pills. And I just sat there and I made a decision. I was like, that's not the way. Like, that's not the path I'm going to walk here. I'm not going to take these pills. And I didn't take one, but I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure out what's happening here. And that started a process, which was a very long, painful process of essentially rebuilding myself back up brick by brick. And there was quite a few occasions when the bricks fell down and I had to start from the beginning again, but it just kind of went from there.
And I like the part where you said, you know, long, hard, arduous process. You know, you didn't skip past that. Like, you know, it wasn't just, hey, you know, they prescribed me some pills and I just took the pills and I felt better. No, I made a conscious decision that I didn't want to take those pills, and that I had a long journey ahead of me. And during that journey, you know, it wasn't always peaches and cream. There was some things that fell apart there, you know. So I appreciate you being transparent and open, because a lot of people need to hear that. It's like, because, you know, there's so much rhetoric online, podcasts, videos that just paint this picture of being an entrepreneur, being, you know, wherever pinnacle you read, like everything was just, one day you woke up and you were just that great. One day you woke up and you was running marathons, and this is happening one day. But people never talk about the progression, the steps that, you know, needed to take place for you to be where you're at today. And that goes right into the actual subject. Right now, things have changed a lot for you. So I hope people in your past measured you, and they measured you well, because things have really turned around. So could you tell us a little bit about, you know, what is the buying process for, you know, getting a business or acquiring a business with no money? Like, what is one essential skill that you would need, and how did that start for you? What was that journey?
Yeah, I mean, so the skills needed are normally the complete opposite to what many people think who haven't sort of got into this world of sort of buying and selling small businesses. And I use the word small. I want to underline that, because the process of buying a small business is very different to how bigger businesses buy, and the way a lot of people think on how to buy a business. They're using the methods the way the big companies do, but it's not the way. I mean, the number one skill that you need is to be good with people, fundamentally, because when you're dealing with a small business, like, you have to recognize that the owner of that business has almost certainly been running that business for 10, 15, 20 years plus. Like, it's their life's work. And from their perspective, they will have a lot of their retirement, a lot of their future life from a financial perspective tied up in that. And so when you're going into these conversations, you have to really get under the skin on, why is the owner selling? You know, what are the motivations to sell in here? And it's almost always non-financial, but almost always. So the typical sort of points at which that's happened in the owner's life in the run up to that conversation is there could be some health concerns or health scares. So they've either, you know, got some serious health to deal with, or they've had close family or close friends who've had a significant scare, even unfortunately pass away, and it's made them realize that they don't want to keep doing this. And so you need to understand that reasons, because from a buyer's perspective, on the other side of the table now, buying a small business is extremely risky, particularly if you're thinking of selling your house emptying your savings account. Like I just want to scream from the rooftop saying, don't do that. That's not the way to do it. Because fundamentally, when you buy a business, you are buying contracts that aren't always written, aren't always worth the paper that they're written on. And in most cases, there's no contracts in place anyway. You're dealing with people, and almost certainly some of those people will leave. Like, you can't be betting all of your security on something that is just so high risk, essentially. So you need to enter into a conversation and propose a conversation with the seller, saying, look, this is your life's work, this is your legacy, you're looking to leave because of these reasons, and I get that. Simultaneously, like, I'm not going to give you a bag full of cash on day one 100% so you can run away for these reasons. So I'm interested in exploring conversations on how we can get you the value for your business. You know, you will still get the same, but we can do it in a way that's going to protect us both. And a lot of small business owners, they don't always like that at first, because in their mind, when they made the decision to sell, they are getting a bag full of cash on day one because they've never sold a business, so they don't understand the process. And even more, they've spent that imaginary bag of cash already. They've already booked the world cruise. They've already, like, seriously, like, they do. Like, they've spent the money before they even got it. So then when you're going to the conversation saying, actually, you're not going to have a load of cash on day one, it's a big, like, whoa, wait a minute, this is not what I imagined. But they also come to the stark realization that there's not fewer people lining up to buy their business. And so it's about getting to a place where you can speak very openly, very transparently, and from a place of trust, which is why it goes back to being good with people and being authentic as well. Like, you can't go into this with ill morals. It's about recognizing this is someone's life's work and you want to do good by them.
Okay, so how can I, or somebody from the listening audience that's listening to this podcast right now, how can they acquire a business with no money? That I don't have no money, but I like a particular business. How could I buy into that?
So just for the record, all of my acquisitions I mean, my very first one, I didn't have the money. Like, I literally had nothing. So all of my acquisitions have been structured where I've not put any money, any of my own money up front. There's only been 2 deals where there's been some money on the first transaction, and the money for both of those I got back. One of them was within 30 days, the other one was in 7 days, but that was funded from a previous acquisition. So again, it was just all came back. But if you're looking and interested in sort of going down this path, then you do need to get educated, because there's a lot of nuances here. And, you know, I've done multiple acquisitions, but they haven't all been a success. And I've had some real train wrecks in there as well. Trust me, like, some real train wrecks. So, which I've used the lessons from those, which have helped me with bigger acquisitions down the line. Like, I've just taken it as part of the experience. So education is a very good place to start. But fundamentally, you're looking for a motivated seller. And typically, these are people who are coming up to retirement. And a lot of us, not everyone, but a lot of us have heard about the wave of baby boomers retiring. There's one of the stats is around 10,000 per day in the US. So there's a lot of people with businesses and they haven't got the buyers to buy them, which puts them in a very difficult situation. So it's recognizing who they are and starting to have an open conversation with them about, well, you know, what are you looking to do? Why are you looking to sell now? This is what I can bring to the table. How would you feel about if we structure things this way? And so forth. Like, the process is very simple, but the skill of it comes down to the people skill. Again, it's all about the people skill.
Okay. And I don't want to skip too much, because I was kind of, you know, I wanted to hear, like, okay, when you said train wreck, I can just imagine, my mind just started, you know, going in so many directions on how, could you give us an example of, you know, a situation where you felt that it was a go, everything was great, but coming by the end, like you said, it became a train wreck. Could you go into depth a little bit with us to let us know what that was?
Yeah, so I'll talk you through my most recent acquisition, because it was a big acquisition, one of the biggest I've done, and there has been so many ugly things rear its head. Fortunately, I've been able to handle it from the earlier experiences, so it hasn't been too bad. In fact, it hasn't been too bad at all. But this was a business that it had around 12 employees, and during the due diligence process, we were, like, my accountant and I were asking the owners of that business questions, and we weren't getting the answers back. And there's two reasons for that. They either didn't know the answer, which is the most worrying thing, or they knew it but didn't want to tell us. So, which is quite common. So the thing to understand as well, just as the context here, is that when you buy a small business, make no mistake about this, you are going into and buying a bunch of problems. Like, I promise you, this is not some rose-tinted business. You're buying a bunch of problems, and it's part of the reason why the sellers want to sell. And so, knowing this, I structured the deal in a way in which there was very tiny amount of money put down on day one, which came from a previous business, but I got that back plus a significant upside within 7 days. So the way I looked at it was my risk was protected, and then it was going into the unknown in terms of what problems have we got here. So the first one happened less than 24 hours after signing the contracts. One of the salespeople, I got a call from two of the salespeople saying one of the salespeople was stealing leads and trying to get, like, sales leads off them. So I had to dismiss him straight away. Then the next week, so I've been in there for 4 days, I believe. I get this phone call from one of the employees saying, like, I know you're new, but you really need to get a sightline on this. And so the previous owner had hired a subcontractor who they'd never used before to do the surfacing, like the tarmacking for one of the country's best, like, sort of top 10 private schools. Like, it was right on the embankment in London, in sort of the Thames River, and he had done a terrible job. It was demanding payment, and so it ended in this confrontation where, at its height, the police were on site, and the guy had broken into this school with a few of his employees and their diggers, threatening to dig up the entire, like, road and like, surfacing. And this was like less than a week into the business. It was just like a phenomenal, like, surreal experience. But the challenges kept coming. So we had a letter about a week later from HMRC. So it's the UK's similar to, like, IRS, and, like, the tax authority, saying that the previous owners, or the business, had overclaimed on some benefits and wanted the best part of $25,000 paid back immediately.
It just keeps piling on. It keeps piling on here.
It just went on and on and on and on, and it's still going on to some degree, like this old legacy stuff that's coming up. But this is why structuring the deal is so important, and this is why you want to approach it in a certain way. Because if I had taken my savings to put down on that business, to buy that business, then not only would I'd risked and lost that savings, but the money would still have to be found for dealing with these issues. So, like, repaying the government the tax of $25,000, which isn't a good situation to be in, of course. But I structured the deal in such a way so that any sort of nasties that came up were going to be taken off of what was owed to the seller. So all of the situations that have come up, and there's been multiple of them, hasn't actually cost me anything, because they've all come off of what was owed to the seller, because fundamentally it was like, they were the cause of this. So they've been solved without having to risk anything. If that makes sense.
So, quick question. So let me have, I'm trying to have a better understanding. I want everyone that's listening to have an understanding. So do you acquire businesses to potentially sell them? Like, that's your exit strategy? or are you buying business to run them, make them more efficient? What's your plan of action there?
It's both, actually. So the ones that I'm holding are related to children's education. So I went into that sector as a complete newbie, hadn't had any experience. I'd just become a dad, which was what piqued my interest in it. And I felt that, certainly in the UK, the education for children, it was very disjointed. And I wanted to play a part in bringing that together. Has to be commercially viable, of course, but that's not what's driving that. So the acquisitions in that space are being kept as part of the portfolio, and we're building that. I've got other acquisitions where I'm buying almost to sell it, really, and I've currently got a sale process happening right now that I'm expecting to, well, pencil to close for the end of this month. It may overrun a little bit, but yeah. And don't get me wrong, there's some very good financial gains you can make from the buying and selling bit. The key to it is doing it right and doing it ethically as well. That's really important to me. So yeah, it's kind of a combination, but I love the buying and selling because you go in, you solve some problems, you then flip the business, and then you have time off. So from a lifestyle perspective, it's pretty cool. I mean, I exited a company last year and had the whole summer off. Didn't have to worry about finance, and I had a great time and enjoyed my daughter, enjoyed my family, traveled. Yeah, so it's kind of a balance.
Okay, so talk a little bit more about the children's education program, because that seemed like to be your go-to, like one of the, I guess it's a business that you acquired, and hey, this is something where you planted your flag and like, hey, this is something that I want to be remembered for. This is something that's profound, and I want to make a difference. And you said that your child was a big motivation in that. So what exactly is that program? And what are you guys doing right now to streamline getting participants into it?
Yep. So that group is called Spectacular Group, and we've got 3 operating companies in there at the moment. All of them have been acquisitions, and 2 of them are franchisors. So I acquired the franchise network, and I have a background in franchising. So between those 2 franchise networks, we educate around 10,000 under 5-year-olds every academic term here in the UK. But then we've also got locations abroad in Australia and in the Middle East as well. So they have all been acquired. Interestingly, they were all turnarounds. So the bigger franchise network that lost a significant amount of money and was just about to hit rock bottom before the acquisition. And then it didn't even need that much work. Like within the next 12 months on our next annual accounts, we posted a fairly significant profit. Like it was sort of interesting. But yeah, so we've got 2 franchise networks, and we have a business that builds outdoor like playgrounds and learning environments for schools as well. And the whole focus here is to build an integrated learning experience for children. So rather than it being disjointed, essentially like bringing it all together and giving a more immersive experience that's actually been designed for the development of the child, rather than just selling a class. Like, it's about the development of the child first and foremost. And it's been an amazing ride, because from a standing start, within 24 months, we were, just under 20 employees, multi-million revenue. It's been a great journey. But one of the best things about this is, well, for me personally at least, is I've structured the group in a way that I'm not in it. So I'm the owner, I take a salary, I set the strategy with my advisors and stuff like that, but I'm not in the day to day. And that's been really important to me, because it gives me the bandwidth to be able to do stuff like podcasts and look at other acquisitions, and also like the adventuring side of things. Like I want to live a full life. I don't just want to be business, business, business and stuck at the office and missing my family, like missing my daughter growing up. So, and also missing opportunities to do things like adventures. See, without going off on a tangent, what got me into the adventures, like really got me into the adventures, like I've done marathons and half marathons and triathlons up to that point, but I was seeing a therapist about 18 months ago for a couple of different reasons. And he didn't go into any personal details, but he said to me, he's like, I've had someone in here who said they're in the latter stages of their life, and they said the biggest regret was that they didn't use their body to their full extent. And I was like, I've never ever heard that. You always hear people saying, I wish I hadn't spent so much more time in the office, or I wish I had the courage to follow my dreams. But I've never heard someone say, I wish I used my body, because they couldn't. Like they were physically incapable. And that set a switch off. I'm like, why not? Why not go across Scotland? Why not go out to the Arctic Circle? Why not do Panama? Like, why not? And so, yeah, so having that bandwidth has been really important to me, and it just goes hand in hand with the group.
Yeah, you're using words that a lot of people don't use. It's almost like the word adventure is extinct. Like we don't hear it anymore. And I take pleasure in it because I have adventures. Just a couple of weeks ago, I went zip lining on the world's longest zip line. So it's like taking that time to have those adventures. Like it's like an interruption of the day to day. If you go to the average human being and say, "Hey, when's the last time you had an adventure?" They can look at you like you're crazy. Like, what are you talking about? And then if they actually was to really think about it, I don't know. Like what do you constitute as an adventure? And if you gotta ask yourself all that, you need to re-engage back into being yourself and find out what it is. What is something that it could be either something that you like to do or something that I say that wakes you up. Like there's certain things in life when you do it, if you're asleep at the wheel, it's going to wake you up. And, when you're talking about adventures have a tendency of waking you up. So in your adventure of businesses, and I there may be a side note, and I want to just ask one more question before we move forward about the education part, because you used the word immersive. So are you guys in this education program, are you guys doing VR and that type stuff yet? AR technology? And if not, you and I have a private conversation because I actually got some partners. That's funny, because I actually got some partners in the UK, and that's what we do. So we do a lot of the VR educational stuff. So yeah.
Interesting. So we haven't really gone into the VR. We did a little bit with the on the playground side in terms of being able to bring our designs to life before anything's even built. So that's been pretty cool. I've experimented with like applying artificial intelligence into it, which is very scary, very, very scary, but it's happening. So yeah, but essentially it's about bringing the experience together and bringing it so it's focused around the development of the child. And what kind of kicked this off, I'll just give a little bit of backstory to this, was when COVID in 2020, when COVID was at its height and we was in complete lockdown in the UK, as many other parts of the world. And my team were all working from home, but I went to our office to work from and had a psychiatrist who was in a room in the hallway, just down the hallway. And there were like 5 of us in the building, and normally there's like hundreds. And she came and knocked on my door and said, "Would you mind keeping the doors open? I've got a new patient coming in. It's a severe case, and I haven't got my rape alarm with me." And I was like, "Whoa, yeah, of course. Don't worry." And she said, "It being out."
Hold on, Adrian. What did you? I want to make sure we heard you correctly there. You said what alarm?
Her rape alarm. It was a new patient, and she was concerned that she didn't know like she's dealing with people with like very severe mental issues and challenges, and she didn't know, like, she didn't have any support with her. And so, because I was like the closest to her, she asked if I'd keep my door open and just keep her like an ear out, if anything. So now I went past, I had a couple of calls, but I cancelled them and sitting at my desk waiting like in silence, and nothing happened. And then yeah, she came and knocked on my door after, and we had a long chat, and we was talking about different stuff. Again, not going into any personal information about her patients. But I asked her a question, which was, you know, where do these issues that people are dealing with, like suicide and severe like mental health, where do they come from? And she was like, they come from the childhood, especially those early years. And I'd spent on previous months thinking about this, and I'm like, that's just it. Like, it's kind of like the penny drops. Like, you have to go into this. So, yeah.
Wow. So when we talk about that personal growth in mindset, and you talked about some of the habits or beliefs you had to change to be who you are today, what are some strategies or some insights that you would give yourself now, if you had to, if you know, based on what you know now, based on all the things you had to navigate, if you had to give advice to your younger self, what would you tell yourself? And in this case, what would you tell the younger listening audience that, you know, would aspire to be who you are, or to even come, or at least try to aspire to become who you are?
It's such a great question, and I wish I had the opportunity to tell my younger self some of the stuff, because I think I look at my life and I feel very blessed and I feel very grateful, but I'm also conscious that there is a ticking clock, that time is important. The best time to start is now. And I think even if I've started some of this stuff 2 years ago, the trajectory and some of the experiences would be, even more like out there and in line to where I want to go. But it's a great question, because this has been like the secret sauce for me, in terms of like being able to sort of pull this together. And I have a very sort of structured process that I go through on a day-by-day basis, and I actually share this openly on Instagram, like my stories. I post several times a day sharing my exact process and sort of saying this is kind of how I'm feeling and this is what I'm doing. But I get up at 4 a.m. every day, and then from there I go into a process of I read 10 pages, I meditate, I visualize, I then get ready and I go to the gym, and then I start working out. And I tend to listen to like an educational podcast and a variety of other things that I do, but I do it every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And I can hand on heart say with complete conviction, it is the best time of my day. Like, I go to bed at night, every night, so looking forward to waking up to start that process, because what I realized was I was waking up and going straight into dad mode or going straight into work mode, and I wasn't actually giving any time to myself. And so I started this journey, which is still evolving, where I was like, I'm just going to get up 30 minutes earlier and read a book. And there's nothing, I'm not going to check emails, I'm not going to go on my phone, I'm just going to read something that will improve me, that will nourish me. And then oh God, I love this time, I'm going to get up another 15 minutes earlier, and I'm going to visualize, because that's really important to me. And then before I knew it, it was like 4 a.m. and, loving it. But that structure and that process has been the secret sauce. And I truly, truly hope people hear that, because that has been what has allowed me to move forward at a very, very fast pace, and to be loving it and strong enough at each of the stages. Because something you said earlier, Brandon, and I completely agreed with it, and I think there's another component to it, which is like, in terms of people, why aren't they doing this? I think half of it as well is because they don't believe they can, and
or they don't believe it'll work.
Yeah. And so the best way to explain this is that And I explain this a lot to people because they're always coming up to me saying, "What's going on? What are you doing?" And I'm like, "This is it." And I'm like completely transparent. but, but if you get out of bed and you go straight into mum mode or dad mode or even work mode, then from that place, like we normally biologically get up and we feel negative, like we feel a bit moody, we feel just like disorientated. I had it this morning. I woke up, it was actually early than 4 a.m. I woke up and I felt tired. I wanted nothing more than to go back to sleep. I felt disorientated. I didn't know where I was or what day it was. But then I quickly snapped into my routine, my program, essentially, like how I sort of manage myself. And then by 7:30, I had read, visualized, been to the gym, meditated, everything I said earlier. 7:30 on a Monday morning. I put a post on this on Instagram today saying, if I had gone into my day getting up without doing that program, then I would have been going into my day as maybe a level 2, maybe level 3 version of me. And what impact would that have had across the day? But I didn't do that. I invested those few hours in myself and I was pumped. Like I was absolutely pumped. So 7:30 on a Monday morning, and I'm like brimming with energy, like, yeah, let's go. And so I'm going into my day as maybe a level 6 or maybe level 7. And it's had a very tangible knock-on effect. So going into conversations, going into meetings, going into deals, I'm just going in as a bigger and better version of myself. And particularly when there's a group of people, you stand out, like because they're all going in as a level 2, level 3. And I just wish I'd known this years ago. And I just so deeply wish that anyone listening to this take this on board, because it is truly the secret sauce. It's not the process of buying the business and no money down. It's the fact that I'm going to these conversations and the sellers are like, this guy's different. And I'm different because of what I'm doing to prep myself for that day.
And I think that's something, that's the punchline. It's funny, a lot of people that's hearing this, I believe that they know that that's the right way. I'm a military guy, so when I was in the military, it was always, everything that you did in the morning was quote unquote taking charge of the day. And by 9 o'clock, and it's a saying, but it's so true. There were times by the time 9 a.m. came, we did more between the hours of, 3:30, 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock than most people ever do or accomplish the whole day. So I understand the importance of taking charge and taking control of your day and how that can set you up, to the trajectory of the rest of your day based upon how you start and managing that. And when you're, like you said, I call it an A, like you're an alpha. So alpha's always leading the pack. They're always going out first. They're going to be the first one up. They're going to be the first one to know what's going on because they're out. So is that idea that you may be listening to this podcast right now and you're hearing what Adrian's talking about, but you say, guess what? It sucks. And it does. Sometimes you got to have the discipline to motivate yourself to do what you need to do. Now, because he's in charge of his own life, his own destiny, doesn't mean he has to, right? Because he's in charge. That's what a lot of people do. They want to go into business for themselves, but they're not willing to put forth the work, right? You don't have to wake up early. You don't have to go work out at the gym early in the morning. You don't have to do those things, but should you do those things? And what is the payoff that's coming from that? And for me, what I'm seeing from you, Adrian, and this talk that we're having is that you understood or you knew how to associate the hard work. Like, it's going to suck. I'm going to have to do it. But as a result, I'm the best version of myself and I'm able to get the best things happening in my life because I've taken charge of that. And I know that it's a winning, we call it winner, chicken dinner. It's always going to serve me. It's always going to serve me. So I don't know how we can, maybe because, you've been doing this a lot longer. How do we drive that point home to people to say, listen, if you make that change, or if you're willing to make that change, understand that there's some things that's going to come down the line that's going to be beneficial for you. not saying that it's not going to suck, that it's not going to hurt as you're trying to adopt things, because, you know, when you're trying something new, it oftentimes hurts. It makes you uncomfortable, but through that uncomfortableness that you will have, there's something greater on the other end. Could you dive a little deeper in that so we can drive that home to the audience? Because I think that's so critical, because I think that's truly what has made you, like, you recognized it, you embraced it. Now it's become a part of you where you feel like alienated if you don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does suck at the beginning. But what I've sort of discovered a few things going down this path, and having stuck to this path consistently for quite a while now, is that there was a point quite early in the journey, and I'm trying to think of exact time frames, but I'm talking weeks rather than like 6 months. Like I'm really mean it. Like there was a point, like maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks in, when something switched inside of me, and it happened naturally. And what switched was I started to realize how much I was enjoying it. Like I started to realize what I was getting from this, because I was feeling better, I was looking better, and all of a sudden, like, yeah, getting up early. And I wasn't getting up at 4 a.m. then. I never advise people start that early. Depending on what time you get up, it's normally about half an hour before that, but 6 a.m. being sort of the latest for your early morning. But there was something that happened after just a couple of weeks where I'm like, yeah, maybe I don't miss all that sleep as much as I thought I do, or maybe I don't feel as tired. And even if I do, I'm like, well, I could stay in bed, but I'm going to miss half an hour when I can just, the peace is here. I don't have anyone else to think about. I can just make a coffee and I can sit down and I can read my book. And it kind of evolved from that. And I've had quite a few people approach me about this on Instagram, saying like, you know, can you help me through those early stages? And it's something I've recently started to do, like to get them into the mindset, because they're seeing like the tangible outputs of this. But that, yeah, like anything, there is discipline required at the like the early part of it. But discipline is a life skill, so you want to develop that, and that's part of this process, is developing it. Because if you can be disciplined enough, and I think disciplined, like now it doesn't feel like discipline to me, getting up at the time that I do, like it genuinely doesn't. But if you can be disciplined and you develop that, then that discipline is applied in other areas of life that, again, just help you to move forward.
Okay, so I guess the next thing I want to ask is the secret sauce. So are there any tools or anything that you use? Like, it was a few years ago, I read the book, Habits of Highly Effective People, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I love that. And, you know, it just talks about the most successful people in the world and some of the things that they do. So what are some of the things or tools that maybe the listeners could put in their tool belt that might be able to assist them in this journey of starting the right habits? Because, like, you know, and I know somebody might be listening to this is like, I thought you guys were talking about acquisition of business and how to do that. Yes, we are. We're still on that subject, but we're talking about how do you get to that point. No one, you know, from what I'm hearing or seeing out here is talking about this stuff. It's like, we're not talking topic-based motivation here. We're talking about systematically how you go from A to Z. Like, yeah, this is the objective, right? But the objective is you want to acquire businesses, or you're an entrepreneur, you're starting, you want to do whatever. That is the destination. We're talking about the journey, because the journey is the most important thing. So could you share a little bit more insight about tools that you use to assist you in your journey to get to the destination that you're at right now?
Yeah, definitely. So, and just to sort of touch on the acquisition type of things, like regardless of whether you're looking to buy a business or you have a business or you're looking to start a business, like the point remains, are you turning up to that startup? Are you turning up to that seller conversation as a level 2 or level 3 version for you? Because I've for a long time in my life, I was just turning up to my life as a level 2 or level 3 version for me. And it didn't matter whether it was acquisitions or starting a business or whatever it was. Like, the results were unremarkable, like say it best. It wasn't the vehicle I was looking at, it was me, the driver. And this is why this is just so important to me, because I genuinely want to stand for the rooftops and be like, you need to listen to this, because this is it's about upgrading the driver. So whether it's acquisitions or startups or whatever your your corporate employer, this is what will make that difference and see you propel forward. But in terms of tools, so that's an interesting one, because I've been on a mini journey with this itself. So I started off like using a couple of different apps. Like first of all, like things like MyFitnessPal for tracking diet and that, because what we put into our bodies is what comes out of it. So that was like a component of this as well. And in terms of tracking habits, there's a variety of different habit trackers. And I eventually ended up where I had 7 different apps all running at the same time as I was trying to track all this and do this. But this has been so transformational for me, like literally so transformational. And I suppose the entrepreneurial spirit in me came out. I was like, I'm going to pull together my own app here. Like, I'm going to put it together so I can have everything in one place, and I can track everything, like from my training through to my nutrition, through to my habits, and I can bring it all together in one place. And so that's what I've done. And it came, like, it went live last month. In August, in early August, and it's been phenomenal, where it literally runs my life. Like, this secret sauce part brings it all together and just allows me to go, really. But you don't necessarily need that. Like, you can do it like the way I do, to bring it.
And this is your app that you've designed for you, right? Or designed for people that wants to.
I designed it for me. I designed it for me. Like this, like this stuff was so powerful. Like, I designed it for me, but so it's just been a really interesting journey, Brandon, because I designed it for me, like purely selfish intentions. I'm like, this stuff is firecracker. Like, this works. I'm gonna pull this together, and even if it is an investment, like, it's totally worth it. I know I'm gonna get this back. But as I've been sharing stuff on Instagram, I've had quite a few people approach me saying, can you help me with this? Can you do this? So I've been able to get them on the app and essentially help structure them through like the earlier parts of that journey, like the harder bits, before everything starts to click and fall into place. And like, it's just been amazing to watch, because their results in a very short period have been, again, just like phenomenal. Like, this is it, really. But anyone,
hey, Adrian, I don't mean to cut you off here, but that's a punchline. So I guess my next question is, how, if someone's listening to this right now and says, listen, I haven't tried anything, I don't even know where to start, I want to connect with Adrian, I want to get that app, how much does it cost? How soon can I get started?
So the best place to reach out about that is Instagram. Like, I'm very active on Instagram. I would encourage someone to follow and then to track what I'm doing, because it literally, like, it's from 4 a.m. I'm sharing a screenshot of my phone at 4 a.m. with a quote to like set up my day and set up anyone watching it all the way through. So I'd encourage people to look at that and then to start asking questions. And I'm always very interested to understand what's holding people back. Like, what are they struggling with? Like, why aren't they doing this now? And just understanding that, really. And it tends to unearth quite a lot. So if anyone's interested in exploring this further, I'd recommend that. My Instagram handle is Adrian J Knight, Knight with a K. So Adrian J Knight. And just like everything, I try to be really open, really transparent, and just lay it down, basically.
And one of the things that I realized that I've been told from when I first got in the military, and I hold it true to this day, is that 99.9% of it is just showing up. Like, if you think about it, like, the first thing you said was like, hey, I have my phone and I have 4:30 in a quote. That's called showing up. That's called showing up. So if you're trying to figure out, if you're listening to this podcast right now, or you're just tuning in, or you're lost, like rewind, because what Adrian's talking about today is the idea of changing your life to this new reality where you can have the things you want. So he went from, a nervous breakdown to acquiring world-class businesses all over the world, creating a legacy, creating some great things. But the key to anything when it comes to business is showing up, because if you show up, most likely you're going to get the right information. You're going to create your own rhythm of doing things. But if you never show up, there's no possibilities. Adrian kept showing up in his life. Even when he got rejected, he kept showing up. Even when he had setbacks, he kept showing up. Even when the people, showed up to his property and he bought this business about to dig up stuff, he kept showing up. So I think that's the key to this is no matter what, keep showing up. But at the same time, you got to focus on the fundamentals of things that is going to make you a better person, the things that you don't know that you don't know. And the only way for you to know those things, you got to show up.
It's so true. Like it was the Woody Allen quote, which is 50% of success is showing up, and it's absolutely right. What I think the switch for me when I really got this was when I realized, because I always I didn't show up to college, all my job when I was going back from traveling, but that aside, like I would always show up to the things that were important to me and that were part of achieving the goals I wanted to achieve. But when the penny dropped for me was when I started asking myself, who am I showing up as? Like, what am I showing up as? Because again, I sort of recognized that I was showing up to my startup, showing up to these business owner conversations as a level 2 version of me. And it was when I started by pure chance, like falling into this way of living, then all of a sudden I was showing up as a level 3 version, and then level 4 version, and level 5 and level 6. And that's when everything took off. Like, genuinely, it's when it took off. And the most exciting thing about all of this is that I think a lot of us automatically assume that it stops at level 10, but it doesn't. It goes into the hundreds and thousands. And so you look at like these billionaires, you look at these extreme like champions, like true champions of the world. Like, what levels are they showing up as? Like, millions, like, just, it's so far. And so this is never ending, and it's very exciting, because what I've also noticed with this is that it compounds. So you can be doing the same activity, then you keep switching it up, but it builds and it builds and it builds, and it's exponential. So yeah, it was showing up, but then also truly understanding how I'm showing up, like who is showing up here. It was more who rather than what or how.
Wow. So this has been, every time, I have a talk like this, to me, it's so insightful because I'm learning from a different person in a different part of the world. The audience gets to tap into a different part of the world. But at the end of the day, it reads one way, and that's greatness. And that's phenomenal. Enduring, positive, uplifting. And those are all the things that, just comes off of you, it pours out of you. And I've definitely received it today. So tell us a little bit, as we get ready to wrap this up, tell us a little bit about some future endeavors. I think you have a upcoming jungle expedition coming up, I believe. Any new business ventures and, future plans for your personal development?
So next year I'm off to Panama for that 14-day jungle trek, so expedition. I'm really looking forward to that. I turn 38 in, I think it's next week actually. Didn't even realize that.
Yes. Happy early birthday.
Thank you. So I turned 38 shortly, and for my 40th, I've got my sights set on going to the South Pole. It's on my like vision board, literally in front of me. I've always had this fascination with like the polar stuff. So that's quite a big one, but I have no doubt that there will be a lot of events and mini adventures sort of peppered in within that over the next couple of years. But with all these adventures, I just want to say as well is that like it didn't start there. It started with a half marathon because I was so unfit, so unhealthy. I was smoking, you know, a pack of cigarettes a day, drinking like a fish, and I was like, I need to do something to snap me out of this. I signed up for a half marathon, and it just evolved. And every time I completed an event, that was when it's like when you reach a horizon, you then can peer over it and be like, oh, maybe I could do that. So I've done the half marathons, like maybe I could do a marathon. I've done the London marathon, like maybe I could do a triathlon. Done the London triathlon, like maybe I could do an Ironman. Done the Ironman, and then I was like, what next? Then it went to like the more extreme stuff. And so other than the South Pole, I don't know what's going to come after Panama, but I know there will be something, and I'm looking for it to be as tough and as hard as possible, because that's what I really get out of this. It's the like I come back from these events a different person, and that has a very tangible knock-on effect to my business, to how I turn up as a father, as a husband. So yeah, time will tell. From a business perspective, as I mentioned earlier, just going through a sale process right now. So looking forward to getting that done. I've got a few changes to make in the children's education group, but then it's been such an intense year as part of this turnaround. I'm actually looking forward to having some time off. I don't know how long that will be, but I'm very fortunate in the nature of my business model, i.e. buying and selling, and being completely removed from the children's education group, that I can, and I can have that flexibility. So we'll see where that goes. Quite honestly, I'm a bit sort of taken back by how many people have approached me about like the personal development stuff I do, and how many people are asking about this app, which is called Elevate Your Life. Like it's for me, like I pulled this together for me. But that's been quite amazing seeing that, and I've really enjoyed helping people sort of go through that, like go through their own process, because all of them are dealing with challenges and problems, and I'm like, you need to focus on you, so that you can go to these challenging problems with more clarity, more confidence, and a better version of yourself, and it works. So yeah, I'm just going to see where that goes, and just enjoy life, really.
Okay, the last question is a question from the previous guest. So the previous guest question to you is, what is it that you want to be remembered for, and why?
For a long time, particularly in my early 20s, my legacy was very important to me. I wanted to do things where I would be remembered for it. And to use your term, you know, so like greatness, whatever that means, different meanings to, you know, to each of us. That was very important to me. But as I've gotten older, that's become less and less important. And I think what's become more important is like just what I'm doing, like what I'm doing now. What value am I adding to the world, to people now? That's been far more important to me. So in many ways, I don't really, I don't care what people think of me after I'm not here. I'm more concerned with adding genuine value to people's lives while I'm here, and you know, whatever that will be in terms of a legacy will be. I don't like. I'm completely detached from that now. I just want to live a good life, be a good person, and for me that means being my authentic self, but then inspiring other people to be their authentic selves as well. So
okay, so what will be the question that you would leave for the next guest?
a question would be, what's your biggest fear? It's like a two-part question. So what's your biggest fear, and what's one step you can take in the next 30 days to move you towards that fear? Like I don't want to say to help you overcome it, because you probably won't do that in one step. But what's your biggest fear, and what's one step you can do to take you towards that fear? So, for example, if it's public speaking, could you sign up for a public speaking course? Because what I've found, particularly with the adventures, and to be fair, everything, but business life as well, is that fear really is imaginary. Like, it's in our minds, and it's when we start moving towards it, it starts to fall away. But it's when we run from it or stand still when it's really firm, but when you step towards it, it starts to crumble away at the edges until you get to the center of it and you're like, nothing's here. But apart from, in most cases, some treasure. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know it didn't make sense.
Yeah, I agree. You know, imperfect action is always going to beat, perfect inaction, like even this podcast is like, I don't make any excuses. Like, the crazy thing, I just interviewed someone like literally maybe a week ago, and they had a total of like 6,500 podcast episodes.
Wow.
And on top of that, they haven't been podcasting as long as I have. Now, and it's easy, like, how perspective can be. And, I always use things that I always tell people, and I always remind myself, use information, use the success of someone else to catapult you. Never be envious, never be jealous, because that's just bad energy. It's like, it doesn't serve you. It just brings you down and puts you in a bad state. So that imperfect action, like when we get on this podcast, we're just, to me, it's always about being real. I say, I'm just a normal person that's trying to, like you said, give value to people. I make mistakes, but if I was to say, well, and unless I can figure out how to not say this in every episode and make this thing perfect, because I don't want people to judge me, I would never get anywhere. So I encourage, like, this whole talk has inspired me in so many ways, because, there's a saying that says you are, sometimes people need an example, and you're an example of how you can mentally push yourself to a level. You've shown how you can physically do it, and then you wrapped it around with giving steps. I guess the only question I got left for you is, where do we go get your book? Or when is your book coming out?
Well, I still, in all honesty, I still feel as though I'm on maybe chapter 3 at the moment. Like, there's a lot of sort of things I want to do and plan to do. Don't always know what they are at the moment, but I'm very curious to see where these adventures lead to. Like after the South Pole, which is only a couple of years away, and I will go there. Like, I will make it happen. I'll find a way of doing it. Like, where'd you go after that? Like, and so it still feels quite early, but I just want to reiterate and to really try and, like, for people who listen to this and to walk away from this, that it didn't start with the South Pole. It didn't start with Panama or the Arctic Circle or the Spartan World Championships in Greece, in Sparta. It started with a half marathon in my local town because I was so unwell, and it just went from there and there and there, and just like next step, and it goes back to that daily structure I have and how I sort of frame myself up to the day, because that reinforces that, and if anything, it turbocharges it. Like, I genuinely feel, had I started this even just 3 years ago, I would have already done the South Pole, and who knows where, like, next, because it's that powerful. So yeah, but so I just want, like, the final thing, I am very active on Instagram. I post several times a day. I really do show my life, from the morning wake up through to inside the businesses, through, like, how I'm feeling, like what's beneath the surface, rather than the glitzy stuff people tend to see. Like, yeah, I want to get real. Like, this is actually got the nice car, but I'm feeling pretty awful today because I've got a high degree of anxiety, and this is what I'm doing to deal with it. Like, that's the stuff that I share.
Woo! Hey guys, this has been another episode of the Start Thinking Forward show, brought to you by Cerebral AI. Get your digital marketing together. So today we had an explosive guest, Adrian Knight. He dropped some nuggets of his entrepreneurial journey from struggles to triumph. And if you like this show or like any other shows, please continue to subscribe, like, and also you could reach out on Adrian's social media. And he's going to give that one more time before we end this thing. Adrian, can you tell us how the listening audience can get in contact with you before we close out?
Yep. So Instagram is by far the best place. And my handle is Adrian J Knight, Knight with a K. I'm very responsive to messages. I love to hear from people. I love to find out what's going on in people's world. So if you have any questions, Instagram is the best place, and I will get back to you as quickly as I can.
All right, guys. Until next time, no matter what you do, no matter what you say, just keep thinking forward. Until next time, bye-bye.